Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to F1 Manager 23. This is episode 37. We're into the final 5 races of the season, and with our monthly car development update, the report clearly shows that we're just not in it for points anymore. If we squeeze out a point, it's going to be through a lot of luck, and it's going to be pretty irrelevant to the larger scheme of things. So the reality is I need to make my way through the next 5 races as fast as possible. I would love to go 3 races in one episode and 2 in the other. I would certainly like to try, but I'm not sure how possible that'll end up being for me. In particular, because we're talking about 3 episodes in one and 2 in the other with some end of season wrap up. We have a sprint weekend in 2 of the next 3 weekends. So we're adding sprint weekends on top of it. With the extra sprint race, basically that would be 5 races packaged into one episode, and I'm not quite sure I can squeeze that in, but we'll see what we can do. Clearly this season is done. We've long since begun preparations for next season to see if we can move up the grid a bit, and there are definitely a few teams that have continually pumped out upgrades for this season. And while, yes, some of that benefit carries over into the next year, because we're talking about a 55% reduction across the board, reduction from where you finish the season. So you make improvements, you're going to retain some of that. But that 55% reduction off the top, well, our top's that little bit lower. But if we really, really, really work on getting that car, which we've been doing, built in a good way for the next year, we should be fairly okay. I don't think we're going to drastically find ourselves at the front of the grid or anything next season, but maybe we move up a little bit, especially with a couple of the cars, a couple of the teams focusing on this year, the here and now, where they're going to lose more of that than what we are recovering towards next year, right? The shift for us is building for next year, building for the future, where those building for the present are going to feel that loss a little bit more. Driver development update for our turn of month into October. +1 control for Sargent, +1 defending for Sargent, both 80 plus now. So we're looking at his only attribute below an 80 is overtaking at 75. Very solid, very average driver now. It's taken him a few years to get there, but he's finally earned his place on the F1 grid. My only problem is he too good? Because we're obviously building for the long term, and that drop off is going to be severe. I think I might have to get a driver that's 76, 77 here at some stage, so that we can at least begin transitioning towards the eventuality of a Flourish plus a second female driver and not have such a massive drop off. But in the meantime, the gap between them has gotten smaller, and this is actually a great month in development for Flourish, where she has picked up a point in braking and three points in control. That's fantastic. 74 in control makes that absolutely one of her better attributes, her third best, just a couple points behind her smoothness. That's a real boost. And both of those 4 points are all related to lap time. And so that's going to help. And making fewer mistakes, in particular with the control. But yeah, lap time. That could be a 1/10 of a second right there, or more.
Welcome to the United States Grand Prix. The Circuit of the Americas is known for its bumpy surface, and with around 133 feet of elevation changes, starting with the uphill climb to turn 1, the Big Red, it's an all-round challenge for cars and drivers. The grid is... Things are hotting up here in Texas for the sprint. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Right from the back of the grid, sprint race. I'm not even pushing. We're not going to be competitive here. Let's just get on with it and get this race done with, so that I can maybe, just maybe, squeeze those 3 races in. While this is rushing along, let me talk about our progress towards next season. That's the huge focal point. That's why we've sacrificed the remainder of this season to get anywhere for next season anyway. So what sort of progress have we made so far? Well, let's do some math, or maths as they like to call it, which I still don't understand. In the UK, mathematics, yes, but maths for short, just anyway. We were just about across the board in the high 70s. Now, this is taking our car into account. The gap from top to bottom of the grid was getting less and less. The higher you get, the harder it is to make gains, and therefore the gap between the teams is smaller. So you can shift positions a lot more easily, which is why we were competitive for points, and suddenly we're at the back of the grid because the gap wasn't that big, and so teams were able to overtake us pretty easily. Sargent P16 now just getting around Sonoda here. Florsch last place, but only 5 seconds off the back, but De Vries was somebody who made a mistake and had been behind Florsch temporarily. Anyway, as we are already near the end of this sprint, with the Ferraris leading the way ahead of the Red Bulls, we were at about 78-ish average for our components as Florsch just spun here right before the end of this race. No harm there, really. 78%. And then take a 50... Oh, gosh, Sargent just spun too. Lost one position. He's okay. He's going again, but he did lose that Sonoda position. 78%, subtract 55% from that. It put us into the low 30s. So we lost 40% roughly. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 41%. So 41% lost on the components themselves is the real kind of raw number we're looking at. I'm just going to round that off to about 40.
We're not far off now here in Austin as the drivers ready themselves for this 56-lap race. Yuki Tsunoda will be hoping things go his way today.
I think they could have been higher up than 20th, but let's see if they can move forward from here.
But just what will happen here, your guess is as good as mine. Here we go. It's the United States Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
There were some penalties in the field, so starting from P15 and P18 here in the race proper. Sargent on the softs early on because he doesn't have enough mediums. The strategy really called for a medium, hard combination, but with only one set of mediums left, we're having to run a set of softs for him and try to be more aggressive, which means off the line, getting ahead of Zhou. So far, that's just about worked out. You can see not too many cars are in the strategy situation that we are in, and we still have not been able to finish off Zhou here, and we're on the outside, so it's not an easy overtake at the moment. Hopefully we can stay beside him through this corner. And no, we don't. Yes, okay, we do stay beside him. There's just a lot of left-handers, so it was really hard to go side by side down the straight with the softs. We pull ahead, complete the overtake. That's P14. Florsch already down to P19, just ahead of Sonoda. Once we get settled in, we'll go ahead and continue our discussion and our progress in covering off the 40% reduction in all of our components. We've opened up a healthy gap to Zhou here, pushing on the softs. That could be good if he's not able to get... Oh, what the heck? He was 1.3 seconds behind us entering that corner, and he overtook us into the corner. Underbraking. From 1.3 seconds behind, we got held up behind traffic ahead as Zhou covered off 1.3 seconds and an overtake in a single corner without a mistake being made. Yikes on that part. That is a absolutely freaking brutal outcome under those circumstances. You can see for Florsch, we're going to go medium, hard, medium. With Sargent, we're going to go soft, medium. soft, hard, medium for his approach. We're going to try to get that middle stint, the hards out of the way through the middle portion of the race. Yeah, that's crazy that we went from him out of DRS range to him overtaking us literally in a single corner. And the whole back group closed up on us too, so there was just, the traffic ahead was just slow. We didn't feel like overtaking, so we just stayed tucked in, and he had momentum. Anyway, we've settled in. We're 3.9 kilograms underfueled, so we are going to have to deal with that. And let's speed things up. Flourish down to last. 40 points. 40 points that we have to cover off. Now, in terms of the parts, that's going to be percentage-wise on how we recover each of those. So, Sargent battling for 13th, actually, getting ahead of Gio and Joe. That's nice, but then there's a gap, either side of us now. We've opened up a 2-second gap to Gio behind us. We're just 2.5 seconds behind those ahead. Fairly competitive so far in this race. It's a two-stopper for everybody. So we're in a good place in this first stint, but of course we're on the softs, so we're going to be slower on other stints. A lot of these guys are on mediums and lack pace, and we're already open for the window. Now, the initial strategy called for a pit on lap 10. We're already on lap 11, so we are definitely going deeper. The hards are off pace. Nobody's on the hards right now. The hards are very slow, and we're going to be on the hards here momentarily. Flourish falling off the back a bit. When the car lacks pace and her overall ability lacks pace, even though it's getting better, that's a bad combination, and it just puts her off the back. So far, we have completed 3 research projects for every single component. We are in the midst of the 4th research project for 3 components. So we're halfway through the 4th round. We will very soon, in about a week, get the 4th and 5th, or are we already on the 4th now? No, we will be getting the 4th and 5th, so we would have 1 left to do. Sargent up to P11, but that's because others on softs have pit a lap earlier than us. We're at 37%, so they will make it as far as they need to go. At the moment, when we are able to contribute significant tunnel time, CFD time, that time pushes us above 4%, close to 5% on the gains. When we have 0 tunnel time added in, we're looking at about 3% on the coverage, as there is a yellow on track. We have a crash involving multiple cars. Sainz is involved in the Red Bull, and we have a Mercedes. Just a touch of the front wing. Sargent down pit road, right behind Piastri. That part's not great, but we're at a very different place on the road itself. But knowing this game, we'll have a good pit stop, and then we'll sit for an extra second or two to wait for him to get by as it stretches gaps. Sure enough, there sat for about a second. Sat for about a second on that one to come out further behind the Alpine than we entered. Ocon with the penalty on that one after making that contact with Sainz. Flourish into her pit window. She'll be pitting fairly soon. Sargent came back out in P18, by the way. Just ahead of Flourish.
Big crash.
Another crash.
Be careful
Oh boy.
on start finish. A lot of debris.
Back-to-back crashes in a short period.
It is dangerous.
Alpine in the AlphaTauri. Gasly, one of them. Sainz is all the way down to P18. Not sure what happened there. All he had was a touch of the right rear. So with all of the upgrades covering 3 to 5%, the average, let's say, is 4. I think that's probably pretty accurate. So we're recovering 4 of the 40 with each research project, which means it's ultimately going to take 10 projects to get the car back to where it was. That, of course, isn't how it's going to work, because you're going to get diminishing returns over time. Flourish hits pit road for her first stop of the day. She's also switching to the hards here. Good stop, 2.516 for her. I wasn't paying attention to Sargent's stop. I was paying attention to whether we were halted, which we were. But she's going to come back out, of course, in P20. Meanwhile, for Sargent, now P16. We had been running P13 before, but being that we're on the hard compound here, I have a feeling we're not going to be great for the next stint. Most of the cars are opting for the mediums for this stint, so either second time on mediums or soft to mediums, and then eventually on the hards to finish the race. We're going the opposite on that, so we'll see if this strategy pays off. Already lap 20. We've only recovered 0.6 of a kilogram so far, and we've done over a third of the race, which means we can expect to recover another 1.2, which leaves us 2 kilograms short. So we will have to lift and coast at some point. Now, Flourish will get lapped, so for her, that should about cover off that fuel already. For Sargent, it looks like we're going to have to lift and coast for 2 kilograms worth here at some stage, unless he too gets lapped, which is entirely possible with the current pace of our car and just how far down the order we're going to be. We'll see if that's the case, but there's a few more cars pitting, and now we're back up to P12. Geo, just ahead of us, has not pit yet either, so we're going to find ourselves all the way back up in P11 with, well, faster cars behind. We'll see how well we can hold them off over the course of this stint, but not in a bad place. Okay, 4 percentage points upgrade per round, and we're on the 4th one now, so that means we're at about 16 of the 40, leaving about 24 to go. Now, I don't expect any of the teams to get the car back to where it was at the end of this season by the start of next season. I don't expect anyone to, but I have no idea how much ground everyone's going to cover. I would suspect everyone will cover 50% or greater, meaning 20 or more, but we're already on 16. So if we hit 20 with our next upgrade, we should be pretty close to where everybody else is. Now, like I said, we are at the halfway stage of that round of getting to that 16. Each project is taking roughly 1 month to complete. It's about 30 days when you throw in the engineers and whatnot. Sargent down to P12 as DeVries gets around. Like I said, we're going to be a little off the pace as we're on the hards and everybody else is on the mediums. It's how well can we hold them off, or how close can we stay as we head towards that next stint and ultimately are the faster car in the final stretch. For now, it's P13. 4 cars, I'd say, in kind of touching distance behind. So far, so good. This is us punching above our weight when we literally qualified 19th, and our practice pace was 19th, and then our final practice pace was 17th. So definitely the slowest car out there. But again, lifting coast still a necessity here at some point, and actually we might want to just inch out a little bit of that as we're all over the back of DeVries. If the halfway point is kind of the minimum target, we're not far off from that. We're halfway through this round of 4, which means 1 more month will get us all the way through the round of 4, which leaves us November and December. That means by the end of December, I expect us to be at the point where we'll have that 5th round done. We'll be at that 20% mark. We'll be at that target for the beginning of next season. In some respects, that becomes the beginning of next season. In other respects, it's not, because really you still have all your preseason and the first race doesn't occur for a while after that, which means I suspect we'll be a good 5% better off than a lot of teams. Now there's that whole start point factor where they're dropping off from a higher level, which means really, well, they might be incurring more than a 40-point loss, so they might not actually even be back to the halfway point. But let's assume for a second that their start point is, say, 80, where we started from 78. They're starting 2 points higher. Losing 55% of that means they're losing at least an additional point compared to us. So if we recover 5 more and they were only 1 ahead, then we could be 4% better off than a lot of teams. In theory, that's what's going on in my head. And so that's what I'm hoping could be the case, that we move up the grid a little bit to start the next season. Sargent, nearing the end of his hard stint, is still P11, but there are cars that have already started to pit. In fact, Florsch is pitting first, comparatively. Florsch, her stop is 2.6 seconds. Tire wear warning for Sargent. We could run 13 laps. We're going to run to the softs. I missed the pit window for Sargent.
Box.
Sargent dives off into the pits. He was definitely off the pace the last lap or two. Lost some time, lost some seconds there. But softs instead of mediums could be a good thing for us. 2.696 though. Fairly slow stop. Definitely slower than what we saw for both of Florsch's stops. And we're out in P16. Let's check in though who needs to pit still. Those behind, they're done. DeVries, I don't know, 73% on mediums. You know, I think everybody ahead of us is probably done. I don't think any of them are going to be pitting again. What we have now is a situation where we are going to have better pace than most of those around us to the end of the race. Yeah, Gasly's actually made 3 stops, so is Piastri. That lift and coast necessity is definitely coming up on us here. In the case of Florsch, she's already a lap down. Sargent isn't going to get lapped here, so we are going to have to lift and coast, and now's as good a time as any to save that fuel and have good pace. Gio and Sargent both moving forward. That's the thing with both of them being on the softs. Ours are a little fresher, a little newer than theirs, but the idea is the same, and we've already recovered most of the fuel. That part's happening pretty quickly, just 1 kilogram left to go. I think for Florsch we are already good, but might as well just save 5 laps to go. Not going forward at all. Gio and Sargent have both caught DeVries, so I mean there is that chance to go forward still and take away the lift and coast. We've got same speed as DeVries, even though we are lifting and coasting, but we're suddenly down to 3 laps to go as we come up on the back of both of the Haas cars. Right now we're only ahead of a single team, so we would very much like to get ahead of both of the Haas cars so that the day is not a bad one from the team's perspective as we get right down to it. As we've caught up to them now, just half a second behind, ready to make a push. I think we can make an overtake after the S's. And there you go. Down, into. So before we even hit the backstretch, which is going to make the overtake on both quite possible. And there you go. We are ahead of both of the Haas cars in a matter of 2 corners. Nicely done on that part. Very nicely done on that part. Continue to push, try to pull away a little bit. Just 2 seconds behind Magnussen. Overtaking the McLaren's not going to make much of a difference. And then he's right behind Gasly. Overtaking him's not going to make much of a difference. But P12 could still be possible for us today. We're still going to have 1 additional lap to go, and now that we've caught them, we've already seen how we could possibly make a double overtake within a couple of corners, so we could have a real advantage. Can we do any of it on the front stretch here before turn 1? Them overtaking each other is not helping me at the moment. Okay, back to conserve. We know where to make a move,
Copy.
and it's here.
Like to reduce light cool.
We are going to have to lift a coast before the end of this lap, but can we get an overtake? Both drivers get DRS, and that doesn't help us right now. Magnussen seems to be way off the pace, but we're going to have to go back to conserve. That was our chance, and it didn't happen, so I'm guessing we're going to stay P14. There we go, back to positive, so balance. Final corner. We get along the outside, but I don't think we're going to be able to overtake before the finish. We do! 0.000! Overtake of the season right on the finish line. Sargent gets Magnussen for P13
On target, good job.
by the literal smallest of
I
margins.
really appreciate this weekend, guys.
P13 doesn't matter much. That's why we rushed through. Maybe closer management. Maybe not missing my window of opportunity to pit maybe we finished P12 anyway, but there was a huge gap to P11, and that was the whole point of it really doesn't matter what we do at this point. We're not scoring points. Car's not there. It's not that far off. We can definitely move forward, but it's not there to be scoring points anymore. Leclerc took the win ahead of Russell, Verstappen, Stroll, and Norris.
We return once more to the hustle and bustle of Mexico City. The Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez is F1's highest altitude track at more than 2,000 meters above sea level. Teams are faced with thinner air around the track here, which includes 2 straights in the first sector. Thin air at this elevation means less airflow around the car. Drivers could struggle with cooling their cars and themselves around Mexico City's track. It's a physical test of technology and human endurance alike. We're nearly ready to get started here. 71 laps, 17 turns. It's the Mexico City Grand Prix. Logan Sargent, definitely one to keep an eye on today.
An encouraging grid position as they sit in P8. Lots to build on during the race if they manage it well.
But remember, anything can happen in Formula One. This is it. Here we go with the Mexico City Grand Prix. It's lights out and away we go.
Not quite sure how he managed it, but Logan Sargent is on the grid P8. So the Q1 barely escaped. And that already was an achievement in and of itself. But Q2 punched way above his weight to make it to Q3. Way better time than what he had in the other sessions. Including Q3, where our time was atrocious compared to everybody else, and it was P10. But thanks to some grid penalties, we bump up a couple spots, and we are P8 to start this one. Flourish, 2-stopper, soft, hard, soft strategy for her, but softs had to be available for that to be the fastest way to go, because the softs are definitely quick. Without the softs available, by getting all the way to Q3 though, Sargent having to go for the 1-stopper, the medium to hard. Technically it is the slower strategy than a 2-stopper, but it's kind of what we have without any softs, without any brand new softs available. We just don't have that option. And so as a result, we're having to kind of push on, hang on, and go for the 2-stopper. But here we are, behind the 2 Mercedes, who have continued to develop throughout the year and have put together a really quick car. Ferrari has continued to develop and have done a lot of finishing ahead of the Red Bulls of late. Okay, we'll see how long we can hang on to this. Can this be a day of points, or are we just going to slowly go backwards because we really don't have the kind of pace that's equivalent of the position we're in at the moment? Or will this track position be enough? We have VSE red flag happened just behind us with a Red Bull with Verstappen. Oh, and then a big crash in together, Piastri. So Verstappen hits Piastri, puts Piastri into the wall, who then bounces off the wall, comes back at Verstappen, and so we have a big double, even a triple collision for Piastri, who goes back into the wall once again after that. And that's going to rule them out of the race. We'll see if others join in on the concept, but I have gone for the hards to get them out of the way and cover a lot of laps here. But it does look like around me, a lot of cars opting for a different strategy. Many cars are on brand new softs here. They clearly won't go the distance, but if they can get us to lap 50 something, we can definitely go softs to the end with just one further stop. Fuel's already right, so that's going to make things easy there. Flourish is P18, so we're not worried about her pushing as we get through our couple laps.
Cool, please.
Okay, so Sargent from P9, definitely off the back of those cars ahead, but if he doesn't just get overtaken again, if we can get into a DRS train and just be second in line, that would be ideal. Sonoda gets ahead, but if we can stay on Sonoda's wheel, then I'm liking what that does for us later on, especially as other cars end up pitting and we benefit of their pace. We do drop another position though. Lap 14 of 71. Sargent is continually dropping down the order. He's now 4th in the line, but he's not off the back of it. That's good. We've got another crash. Getting a lot of those today.
Now we're watching Carlos Sainz here.
Hi, I'm back.
So close.
Oh my goodness, the
Ooh,
other
that's quite
Red
an
Bull
impact between them, and they'll have to pick themselves up after.
the other Alpine. Wasn't it an Alpine and a Red Bull? It was an Alpine and a Red Bull, so the other two come together. The pace boost was nice for 18 laps or so. And a lot of these guys aren't going to last much longer than this before they end up pitting. And then they will be the ones off the pace at that point. Sargent has been overtaken again and again by a number of cars, so that's a little worrying going forward. But nobody's on the hards. Nobody's on the hards. They're all on softs again and have to pit again. It's just about time. We're going to pit here very soon, so let's go aggressive. 2.77 for Sargent for his stop. 2.394 for Florsch. 0.4 of a second better. Big difference there. But we come out in last. We come out in last. We can definitely make these tires last till the end, though, so we are done for the day. And others either aren't done for the day, like Zhou's definitely not done for the day. If they are done for the day, though, they're going to be off pace in the final laps. We definitely have a chance to go forward. P14 for Sargent, P17 for Florsch. We do have an Alfa Romeo set to score some points today. We had an AlphaTauri or a Haas set to score some points today. What is our overall kind of gap? We have caught up to Albon, and we might get the overtake done on him. We're ahead of the Red Bulls and the Alpines for today. Sainz carrying that damage. That's 2 teams that we're ahead of. It would take Sonoda to make it a 3rd team. Leclerc takes the win. Comfortably ahead of Russell. Ocon, Stroll. 4 cars finished a lap down. Sargent, last car in the lead lap. 2 seconds behind De Vries. He did get Albon. The battle for 8th is on as Haas picks up 1 point to get to 7, and Alfa Romeo pick up 2 points to get to 7. AlphaTauri sit on just 2 points for the season. Again, none of those 3 are in touching distance of our 30, so we are pretty comfortable with our 7th place. Florsch's phenomenal pit stop was 4th best of the day, adding 12 points to our total, just behind the AlphaTauri and Aston Martins for 6th and 7th in the fastest pit stop competition, well ahead of Haas and Alfa Romeo.
Our F1 season brings us to Brazil for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Better known simply as Interlagos, the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache sits between 2 lakes here in Sao Paulo. The home of the Brazilian round of Formula One since 1973, plenty of champions have been crowned here, with many more to come. The Sao Paulo track is beautifully designed to present an enticing challenge for teams and drivers alike. Between medium-speed S-corners, hill climbs, and the high-speed section after Junção, this circuit calls for cars to have a balanced setup to succeed here. 24 laps around Interlagos awaits these drivers in what should be an entertaining 24 laps around Sao Paulo in today's sprint. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Final sprint of the season. Sargent from P16, Florsch from P20. Not a terrible qualifying by any stretch. And we're opting for the mediums, as I'm assuming everyone did. Yes, they did. I did underfuel by 1 lap, so we'll see how that goes as we come up on the end of lap number 2. So that's back off.
Nice to manage the tires.
Copy. Okay, happy to manage tyres short term.
Yeah.
P15. Keep an eye on that fuel recovery. Are we gaining 1/10 per lap? No. So we are going to have to lift and coast here a little bit at some point. Crash here between the Haas and Alfa Romeo. Gio is one of those. Didn't see a crash at all.
It's not going
Has pulled away from De Vries and he's right on the heels of Albin and Giovinazzi. Otherwise, he would have or probably already overtaken. But that double sprint train, a little bit of an issue. Definitely a bit of a traffic jam for Sargent. Well behind the field. I mean, we've got a group of teams that's well behind. Sargent gets up the inside of Albin and gets into that prime number 2 spot. Definitely where you want to be here. Late. Oh, have not finished the overtake. Go aggressive. Go aggressive. No, don't. Ah, yeah. You had the position, had the track position, and didn't finish the job. We do have a positive delta finally. And we get up the inside of the Haas and do the same thing that we were doing with Albin a lap ago. Still side by side. No, we've finished the overtake. And we're going to have 1 lap to go here in just a moment. Getting up the inside.
Copy.
Oh! Whoa, what the heck just happened? Contact. Was there contact? Yes, there was. There was contact there.
Room here. And the impact on the car, it's quite clear. And having seen it back, I think it's pretty obvious who was at fault.
I'm not sure it's pretty obvious who was at fault. Are they going to blame us? There was enough racing room on the outside. Just don't pick up a penalty. Oh, Sargent gets the penalty. Of course they give it to him. Drop 5 seconds. It's going to put him way to the back of the group. Hard to say who was at fault there. Really hard to say. That looked very much like a racing incident. We were on the inside. We were comfortable. We gave him room on the outside. So how is it our fault? Did we lose it on the overtake? I mean, it didn't look like it. So I don't think Sargent's done anything wrong there. But he's now about to drop a whole bunch of positions and finish 18th. Flourish. Very close on whether she's going to make it on the fuel. I hadn't been checking on that. She's
We'll start the lifting post now.
just crossed the line. Yeah, she's run out of fuel. Bumped all the way down to P18, so that's definitely not the result you want. That was unfortunate. It really felt like a racing incident. He's got the inside position. He gave room to the outside. The contact. They are literally alongside each other. In fact, we were a little bit ahead. We were certainly side by side at the apex. We have the right to be there. So I don't think it was really either one of their faults and should have gone down as a racing incident, no penalty.
We're not too far away from the race start here as we edge closer to the 71 laps of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. This could be an important race today for Lance Stroll.
That's a really strong starting position for them in P5. They just need to keep it clean and sensible in the race.
Right, let's get to it then. And now, it's time for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Thanks to penalties, we move up a little bit, P16, P17, but very much a harsh start, harsh penalty there for Sargent that has set us back. Knowing that the fuel recovers very slow here, I've only underfueled by a single lap. And we will largely be speeding things up because it looks like we're not going to be competing for points today, but Ocon runs wide on turn 4 and drops to the back of the grid. And there's already been a crash. Right on the end of lap number 1.
This one is involving Yuki Tsunoda. Tries to get by.
Same place where we had our incident. Worse incident.
Thankfully, after that, it seems the drivers are okay.
Tsunoda off the track for that one. Definitely should have wing damage for both cars. If we got called for a penalty, that one should be a penalty. We'll see if it's actually given. Potas, the other driver involved. Bottas doesn't get a penalty. Sure. Exact same incident we just had in the sprint. And they give no penalty, which was the right call. But why didn't we get a no penalty situation? So 15th and 16th for now. Florsch still up there. Another incident on lap, what, 3 heading into 4? Perez at fault on that one. Didn't hit the apex. Went wide, hit the Alpine. So that was him misjudging in the corner. Didn't full lock up, but he definitely missed the apex. Sainz picks up the penalty, rightfully so. That one's obvious. And Gasly out of the race. So Gasly has returned to the garage and retired the car. Too much damage. And we find ourselves now in P12, P17. Florsch still ahead of a couple cars. And Sargent has moved up the order a little bit and is right behind Zhou. Haas looking the stronger team of the backfield today. But Sargent's up to P11 for the time being. How many are on the softs, though? Oh, wow, not many. No wonder we're going forward. Russell at us. It's going to be one of those race weekends, huh? Same flipping corner.
And not just one car involved in
Same
that,
incident.
Bottas
Bottas didn't get a penalty. We got one last time. Are they going to screw us again and give us another penalty for the lightest touching of wheels? Minor front wing damage for that. Sargent gets a freaking penalty! 3 times that incident has happened. Twice Sargent is given a penalty, and in the other one, the exact same thing. No penalty given. Sargent's all the way down to P15. This damage that he's carrying... Oh gosh, wait. Into the pits. Sainz also into the pits. Florsch will also be into the pits here, but she's far enough back that the extra 5 seconds will not put them in range. 7.5. Good stop. 2.5 seconds. And enough time for Florsch. 2.678. Faster for Sargent for a change, but the extra 5 seconds hurts. Sainz pits, comes out behind Florsch. Just barely. But the other cars that Sargent had been ahead of, Pitt came out ahead of him. 5 seconds making the difference. Lap 32. We're just taking things quick today. Absolutely nothing to fight for. Off the back, off the pace, carrying the damage. Not helping Sargent's pace any. He is slowly losing more time. Probably should have replaced the wing. However, there's only 2 wings left. So we don't have the spares to put on. We're on to the last 2. And that happened after the incident in the sprint race. Lap 42. Fuel's mostly good. You can see how long it's taken us to get anywhere with this. Cars pit, come out behind us. We are starting to move ahead, but we do still have another pit stop to make. So 2.6 seconds for Sargent for his stop, 2.47 for Florsch on her final stop, and we head back out on the track. On the softs, we'll have better pace for this last stint, lap 53. Fuel's almost right, but it's taken all race to get it most of the way there. Really, really poor fuel recovery here compared to other tracks. Sargent finds himself in 16th, just ahead of Sainz, who was carrying damage, is slower, but it's still a Red Bull. So he does eventually get ahead of us, and we now find ourselves ahead of no one but De Vries, who crashed on his own, but didn't end up out of the race. Florsch just a handful of seconds behind him. Rarefied air for Sargent here. Final laps, closing laps of this race. We've been lapped. It's been a while since that's happened. Florsch every race, but Sargent, yeah, been a while. We have caught Bottas. Sainz has already gotten around him. And Sargent with another incident. Oh my goodness. Should have just retired the freaking car.
Was at turn 1.
So we catch Bottas and we're trying to overtake him, and he loses it and comes into us. So he lost it on the apex and slid into us. One on. No penalty. No penalty given. Really? Just the front wing damage somehow. But how? How? He's the one who's gotten away with both of those incidents too. Dumbfounded. Dumbfounded. 2 clear racing incidents, we get penalized twice. 10 seconds worth. Absolutely destroyed our races. The wing damage doing the worst of it, more so than the penalty. But, you know, in the sprint, it cost us, what, 4 spots?
That's your last lap, mate. Last
That
lap.
was costly. But then here, and the guy who causes two bad incidents, where he's clearly at fault in both of them. Well, no, in one of them. The other one, it was the same thing as what happened with us, and it was a racing incident, and he gets away without the penalty, right? Exact same freaking thing. In this one, clear fault. Clear. He literally just lost it on the apex and slid into us. That's causing a collision. 100% at fault. 100%.
Good fight.
16th versus 17th meant absolutely nothing. But
I truly gave it everything I had there.
Florsch did get ahead of DeVries in the end. One of the only encouraging things here is that Florsch, her pace compared to Sargent wasn't that bad. I mean, her fastest lap was only 1/10 of a second off of Sargent. Her pace, you know, in the end, she was only 40 seconds down on Sargent. But again, a lot of that was he was carrying some damage, and it cost him a little bit of time, lap by lap by lap. I think the reality is, though, he finishes 15th or 16th if he's not carrying that damage and not serving that stupid penalty. Doesn't put us in the points. Doesn't make a difference. Just frustrating. Just frustrating. Doesn't matter what position you're in. You see it in real life all the time, too. You'll see cars battle for 17th and 18th. Aggressively. Why? You're a racing driver. Magnussen closing in on Sargent a little bit here in the final races, as the McLaren is definitely scoring more points consistently. But I think we might just about hang on to that P12. Alfa Romeo score a point again today and move up to P8, so they jump Haas. That's the battle here down the stretch. Is there any other battles? No. Aston Martin and McLaren aren't that far off from each other, but at 31 points with 2 races to go is probably going to be unachievable. Ferrari has definitely closed a lot on Red Bull, but with only 2 races to go, they're not going to overtake them. Hence, Red Bull focusing on next season and giving themselves a leg up on next season. That is going to do it for this episode, though. We did manage to squeeze in the 3 races. It was a lot of work to do so, but we did get there, and now have just 2 left on the season. I'm a Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there. Bye for now.